In this short tutorial I'm going to look at how you go about testing a web page. I'm using the Massage View case study as an example, and I'm just going to show the tests I want to carry out for this one page, which is their, if you like, newsletter page. For Computer Crazy, the equivalent is their membership or registration page. Okay, what's the type of things we need to test on a web page? Just like any program really, it's to make sure the functionality works and the layout and the appearance of the form is okay. In web pages, the style of the web page, in other words the color, background, lilac in this case, the size of the font and the color of the font for text is all controlled, and even the menus in this case are all controlled by CSS, cascading style sheets. So that's the first thing I need to test. On each of my web pages, is the layout correct, are the colors correct, the fonts correct, and do the menus work? And the second thing I need to test on this particular page is there's some JavaScript, there's some programming behind the page so that it does some validation. For example, I just click submit, I haven't put in the first name and it's asking me to fill it out. So it's got some JavaScript basically within the code that makes sure that someone fills out the form correctly. So how do we go about testing? Well, you can test it just in this way, which is go through what you think the page should do, but testing should be more structured, more rigorous than that. Here I've got a test plan. We always plan out our testing. The idea of this is that you plan the test you need to make to prove both to yourself and the client, the person you're writing the web page for, what the whether it works or not. Types of things. Each test should have a separate number so you can refer to it, so that column is there. The element tested just means what type of test is it. For example, my first test I've got in this first row is called CSS layout, so it's testing that the cascading style sheets, the layout of the page, is correct. Second column along here, the third column is the page I'm testing. My page is called newsletter.html. You would have tests for each of your pages. There's no test data because I'm not going to enter any data into the page. The expected result, now I've got quite a lot on this one because I'm actually doing one thing for the test. That's if you can hear me. I've just got a plane going overhead. One of the pleasures of living near Heathrow. Anyway, the expected result, there's quite a lot of them here. This is what I expect to happen when I test this page. And what I've really done, I've cheated a little. I've put all the CSS layout testing into one test, and I've basically said what I expect the page to look like. So in this case it has a light purple background, the text is in black, etc. Banner, footer images displayed correctly, sidebar to the right, etc. So you do that for each of your pages. It's the same test basically. Each of my pages should have that same CSS layout, so I can copy this test later. The actual result column shows what you actually got when you run the test. So let's go off and test it. I'm going to look for all the background, etc. So I'd have a look, colors okay, banner images, etc. The image, as I roll over each of the menus, the background color changes. So the CSS layout's okay, except as I show you here, if I click on one of the pages, I should have a sidebar. Oh, this page has got some errors anyway. Let's have a look at this one. So this is a different page, but you can see there's a sidebar on the right. My newsletter should have that. I've actually got it as one of my tests. Sidebar to the right, so I forgot to do that. So all I do is I record in this column whether it passed or failed the test. It failed it. In reality, you would normally correct that test and retest it, i.e. you'd put the sidebar in. But for the exercise we're doing for the P6 testing for the assignment, just mark that it fails. Final thing you need to do is you put a screenshot, a record of the testing you do under this reference column, and I've just labelled it S1. You can call it what you want, but underneath the bottom I'll take a screenshot of my web page in true Blue Peter style, one I did earlier, and I'm just putting it there as a reference. So that's a reference to say that refers to the first test I did. Let's look at the second test. So that was CSS layout. Now what I'm going to look at, I've numbered it 20. I leave some gaps, by the way, between the test numbers, just if I have to insert a test. So instead of 1, 2, 3, if I label them by 10, if I miss a test out, maybe I want to add something in, I can always insert it, so perhaps 15. But in this particular case it's 20. The element I'm testing is the HTML links. Now what these are is that the links in the menus work. Not the way they look, not the colour, not the font, not the change of colours, but when I click on them does it work. In the expected result column I've listed, and remember this is for Massage View, I've listed what web page I expect it to go to. So basically you go to your page and you test, does it work? And I'm just going to go back, so I'm on newsletter, and remember you have to do them from each of theirs. So the newsletter link works, make a booking works, and you test each of your web pages, each of your links from the newsletter one, and then you say that's passed. So that means all the links, all the menu links work for that page, but I would have to do the same test for every other page. In fact, these first two tests here, test number 10, test number 20, are going to be the same for each page. So I could actually copy this, and I could paste it if I want at the end of my test plan, and all I'd really need to do is change the page. So instead of testing the layout and the menus on newsletter.html, maybe I'll do it on index.html. In other words, each page you test the layout, you test the menus. However, that's the thing that's common, but the things that are different, for example, on my newsletter page, the layout's the same, but obviously I've got this form. Well, this is the only page that's got the form, so I've got to put tests in for each part of that to test that the JavaScript's working. So my next set of tests, starting with number 30, is first name validation. Remember, this is what I'm testing, the element tested. So what I want to test is, does the first name validation work? I'm testing this page. Now I'm going to put some test data. So this column is test data. And the test data is, well, I'm just not going to enter anything in the first name. What I expect to happen is to get an error message, and what I'm actually going to do, I've already tested it anyway, but let's just refresh this. Press submit. First name must be filled out. So I take a screenshot showing the error message up, and I put that down as S2. It's my second screenshot. I've put down the actual result, error message displayed, and then I mark to say that the test has passed. And if you go down to S2 and I paste it at the bottom, put the reference S2 and just a screenshot. So all I'm doing is proving that the test said, and I go for each of the other tests. So then I do first name validation, last name, gender validation, form submission. The one I've missed off, I've just realised, is the email. Email should be put. So you do that for each of your pages. So you've got your membership page, but you'd also have to test, let's have a look. In Computer Crazy there's a page like this where you check on a list, so a checkbox, to make sure your games page, your shopping basket works. But you'd have to check each one of those. You'd have to check, if I tick that, does it come up with the right cost? That would be a separate test, and then I'd test the next one. You get the idea. You go through it to test that each of the checkboxes work, and each one of those should be a separate test. So that's basically the essence of testing. Final thing I'm going to mention, you should take a sample. It should actually be for every page, but you could do a couple of pages, 2 of the pages of the website. Make sure they display correctly in 3 different browsers. So look at my test number 70. The page displayed correctly in Internet Explorer. I test that and say whether it passed, and I take a screenshot again. Well, my first screenshot S1 is Internet Explorer, so that's proved it. But then test it in Google Chrome and any other one you want to choose, Mozilla Firefox. 3 different browsers. I'm basically checking to see that the layout is correct, that nothing goes wrong with the CSS. If it does go wrong, and your CSS or your page layout doesn't work in a particular browser, in this case you just mark it as failed, and you have a screenshot of whatever one it was. But and you don't need to correct it for this particular exercise. That's basically a very quick run through of what the testing's run about actually needs to do. So what you need to do now is get this test plan, which is in Study Space. You can use this as a template, change it for your website, and then make sure you run through each of your testers, take a screenshot and mark whether it failed or passed.